Hi, welcome to this series where I'll be going through the ITIL 4 practices individually, and I'll be giving you the headline points you need to be aware of in order to support your base knowledge around ITIL 4. I'll also be giving an overall context and some real world experience of some of the organisations I've worked in and how I've applied this. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click the bell, you'll get the updates. Okay, so let's get to it. Today I'm going to be covering off strategy management from the general management practice. What's a practice? Well, a reminder, practice is a set of organisational resources which have been designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. So in terms of strategy management, if we go back in time very briefly to ITIL 3, and remember the four building blocks of service strategy. Those are the 4 P's: perspective, position, plan and pattern. And ITIL 3 talked about service strategy as the centre, the main origin, the point of the ITIL service lifecycle. It was right in the middle, if you remember. It provides guidance on clarification, provides guidance on prioritisation of service providers and investments in services. More generally, service strategy focused on helping IT organisations improve and develop over the long term. So if we now flip back into ITIL 4, and let's see what ITIL 4 has to say around strategy. So the purpose of strategy management practice, so remember, so the first point is it's a practice, so it's within the general management practices, but the purpose of strategy management practice in ITIL 4 is to formulate the goals of the organisation and adopt the courses of action and allocation of resources necessary for achieving those goals. So quite a lot there. Strategy management establishes the organisation's direction. It also provides the organisation's focus, the effort, and it clarifies the organisation's priorities and provides consistency or guidance in respect and in response to the particular organisation's ecosystem, the organisation's environment. So I always like to see this as 3 things: formulating, action and allocation. So in the context of formulating the goals of an organisation and adopting the courses of action and allocation of resources necessary for achieving the goals. The starting point for strategy management is to understand the context of the organisation and define the desired outcomes. So if you think of strategy as how best to prioritise a whole bunch of things in order to get to the outcome and to deliver that value. So prioritisation of resources, prioritisation of capabilities, investments, all aiming to deliver those outcomes, while the practice ensures the strategy is defined, agreed, maintained and achieved. Okay, so I hear you say, what are the objectives of strategy management? Well, analyse the environment, so look at and identify opportunities that will be of benefit to the organisation, look at constraints, so identify constraints that might prevent the achievement of the business outcome and define how those constraints could be removed or their efforts reduced. The other element is around perspective and direction. So decide and agree on the organisation's perspective, decide and agree on the organisation's direction internally with relevant stakeholders, including its vision, mission and principles. The other objective is around perspective, it's around position, but it's about being relative to the customers and to that organisation's competitors. So establish the perspective and position of the organisation relative to its customers and competitors. That includes defining the services, and that includes defining the products which will be delivered to the market space, and how to maintain that ever so important competitive advantage. The other objective is around translating the high-level strategy into meaningful activities that can be completed, tactical plans, operational plans. So ensuring that strategy is being translated into tactical and operational plans for each OU, organisational unit, that is expected to deliver on the overall strategy. So it's that translation piece, translating it into tactical and operational plans, how to do it. If the vision, if the strategy is in order to do X, how are we going to do it? What are the tactical steps? What are those operational steps? And then the other element, of course, is the actual execution of those plans. So not only have you got the translation piece, if you like, into the tactical and the operational plans, you've then got okay, you need to do it now, so we need to execute on those plans, and that needs coordination of effort, both at tactical and at operational levels. And then you need to manage change as well, so that there's going to be lots of different changes to the strategies, the related documents, ensuring those strategies keep pace with change to internal and external environments, as well as other factors that may well be relevant. Another, I suppose, just a general observation around strategy management. It's not unusual that you hear people talk about strategy is for the managers, it's for the senior exec, for the directors. They set the strategy, and typically it's quite a rigid process. There's more recently an emphasis on employees becoming more creative, more innovative. So if you think around agile, so if we think in an agile and lean context, strategy is becoming much more flexible, much more fluid, more experimental, more opportunistic. Of course, you still need to balance the direction in which the organisation's going, otherwise it would be chaotic. But it's just an interesting comparison, really. It wasn't that long ago that the view around strategy was that's held at exec, at senior management level, and it's quite formalised. Whereas more recently, this agile movement, this lean context, looking at waste, looking at incremental, looking at things being a little more fluid, opportunistic, experimental, that's starting to come through. But clearly there needs to be an overarching, I think harmony is quite a good word to use there in terms of making sure there is that harmony within the rigid approach, if you like, but at the same time taking advantage of the lean and agile principles. So think lean strategy balancing rigid, formal, structured planning against more fluid, experimental, fail fast. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, what can we do to change it? If it did work, okay, how can we adapt that incremental? Maybe we need to look at how can we filter out waste from that environment. Okay, so let's talk about service value chains and the activities within the service value chain. So I always remember this as PIDOD: plan, improve, engage, design and transition, obtain and build, delivery and support. So from a strategy perspective, as with a lot of practices that we've talked about in the general management practice area, that the practice is involved in all of those areas, in the plan, in the improve, in the engage, the design and transition, the obtain and build, deliver and support, but particular emphasis here really on the plan point. So moving the strategy on to actual plans, actual stuff to do, and that typically is translated to a tactical level and an operational level for people to actually do it. Okay, so just to take a moment here to pause and talk through a real world example where I've worked in an organisation where I've been involved in setting the strategy, and I typically split that into the demand, into the control, and into the supply section. So a demand, you would look at business context, you would look at this, what is business success, what's the business capabilities, what's the IT contribution to that. For control, you may look at things like principles. So from an ITIL 4 perspective, the guiding principles always fit very nicely into this. Consider governance and compliance and how that will be put into place. So these are the control factors. Finance, so the money side of things, the assets, the budget, what the service offerings are, and investment, and then also the metric side of things in terms of making sure there's meaningful and relevant business outcome indicators. So that would be the control section. And then supply, so you would want to be covering things like IT services, the products and services, what the operating model is, maturing best practice approaches as a couple of examples within IT services. And then architecture, of course, you need an architecture element around, typically it's being cloud first, and just making sure that you're using best practice, best in breed for service management tooling as an example, looking at how do you, perhaps this strategy for architecture may well be cloud first, commercial off the shelf tooling. And then people, so think about the supply of people. What kind of people are you looking for? Do you want agile? Do you want T-shaped, pie-shaped individuals, structures, dimensions, competencies, pushing that collaborative approach rather than a cooperative approach, and even simple things like instilling a common language, and clearly ITIL is a really good way forward on that in terms of just instilling that common terminology, that common language. And then the other area is around sourcing strategy as well, as to how are you going to right size the support model. Do you outsource, do you insource, or is there a opportunity for consolidation, supply consolidation perhaps? But certainly from a sourcing strategy, taking a commodity consumption based approach and focusing on supplier relationships, bringing them along with the journey. So that's just a kind of a very, very quick whistle-stop tour in terms of IT strategy, but how I've used that in organisations and aligning that to ITIL. So if you imagine 3 columns, top of the column, demand, the second column you've got control, and the third column you've got supply. And in demand you would have business contexts, business success, what does success look like, business capabilities, IT contribution, what are IT going to bring to the party. And then for the control section, it's principles, governance, finances, and metrics, all good things that you can put together to control your environment and control IT. And then the third column is supply, so IT services, architecture, thoughts, people, direction, people, thoughts, and sourcing. So that's very quickly, just I would share that to demonstrate how that can dovetail quite nicely into ITIL 4. And I've used that in a number of organisations. Final thought on strategy management. Strategies not just for large international multi-site organisations that are generating billions of dollars. That it's for large organisations, it's for medium organisations, it's for small organisations. Don't just think it's for big companies and big organisations. Strategy sets the direction and alignment for the organisation, and like most things, it must create value. It sets a really good clear perspective, it sets a good clear positioning statement and clear plans, whether those are tactical or operational plans, to actually deliver that value to your customers and of course your stakeholders through the products and services that you provide. I hope you've enjoyed this very brief overview of ITIL for strategy. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll keep you updated. Thank you.